The U.S. military receives White House approval to strike Al-Shabaab militants in Somalia. Nigerian army conducts military drills in Sambisa forest, a previous stronghold for Boko Haram militants. And ever wondered how Americans get to work using public transportation? We'll show you how. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Now, widespread food insecurity due to drought and conflict continues to grip northeast Nigeria, South Sudan, Yemen, and Somalia. Now, the United Nations Children's Agency says nearly 27 million people in those countries are facing famine and do not have access to safe water, which can be as deadly to malnourished children as a lack of food. In the breakaway Somali Republic of Somaliland, the drought is decimating livestock, leaving many families with little source of income or food. The land is empty and dry in the drought-stricken Sul region of eastern Somaliland. Inda Ahmed Mohammed, a 25-year-old mother, sits next to her hut as her 4 children stand close by. Until recently, she had 6 children.
I have never faced such a dilemma in my entire life.
Last month, she lost 2 daughters, a 4-year-old and a 6-month-old.
The older one was sick and weak for 4 months. She was coughing, and the younger one was malnourished and has died. The younger one was thin. I did not have any special food to feed her. I was only breastfeeding her, and sometimes I mixed some flour to feed her.
The drought has killed almost all of the family's livestock, about 200 goats. They only have about 10 left. Mohammed burned some of the carcasses in a nearby area to contain any diseases.
I'm scared of losing the 4 kids I have left to hunger. But what can I do if I don't have anything to feed them?
She buried our older child, named Nimko, in the nearby city of Las Anod, where she was taken a few days before her death. But Mohammed buried our baby just a 3-minute walk from her hut.
My daughter Ikran is buried here. She died of malnutrition. I visit this makeshift grave every morning and afternoon to pray for her. I feel emotional every time I come here.
Mohammed gets some food from Adi Adaya camp, a nearby makeshift camp housing more than 800 people affected by the drought. Her husband has traveled to nearby villages searching for food for the family. When the water provided by the Regional Drought Committee runs out, the family is forced to drink dirty water from a nearby well. The drought has forced many families in the area to flee in search of food and water, but Hinda Mohammed says she's not going anywhere.
I don't have anything or any asset in any other place, so I've decided to stay here.
According to Somaliland officials, the herders in eastern regions have lost 80% of their livestock in the current drought. Well, that report was produced in the Sul region of Somaliland by VOA Somali correspondent Abdulaziz Osman. For the first time in years, the Nigerian army has conducted military drills in the Sambisa forest, which previously had been a stronghold for Boko Haram terrorists. Reporter Hassaina Mohammed was recently given a rare access to the parade in Maiduguri. VOA Salam Solomon narrates. Today we bring you this report.
Brigades of the Nigerian Army's 7th Division performed their 2017 annual drill in this wooded area of Borno State in northeast Nigeria. The location was no accident. This is the Sambisa forest, once a stronghold of Boko Haram. The Nigerian Army retook Sambisa late last year and moved the annual exercises here. The event was attended by leaders from the military and the Nigerian government. Nigerian Minister of Defense Mansour Dan Ali said they keep training soldiers to ensure that their defense and strategies are up to date.
I can categorically say that never again will Boko Haram territories occupy any of our land.
Nigeria's Army Chief Lieutenant General Tukur Butai thanked the public for its assistance in helping recapture the forest, though he warned the battle against Boko Haram is not over.
Today, Boko Haram are in hiding. Tomorrow you wake up and the spate of attacks seem to continue. This is what we can do to protect the people.
Boko Haram has killed at least 18,000 people since the insurgency began in 2009. It isn't known how many Nigerian soldiers and civilians who fought alongside them have lost their lives. The governor of Borno, Kashim Shettima, said the state will dedicate December 27th of each year as a day of remembrance of Sambisa. December 27th, 2016 was the day the military declared the forest free of Boko Haram.
The whole idea is to preserve history so that we keep memories alive, so that we celebrate our heroes.
Leaders from different arms of government watched as soldiers took part in a shooting competition. For Hasina Mohammed, Salim Solomon, VOA News.
Now, the U.S. military has been granted broader authority to carry out strikes against al-Shabaab in Somalia. The White House has declared parts of Somalia an area of active hostilities for at least 180 days, but Mogadishu was not included. For more insight, Jibril Mohammed, a professor in Somalia issues at The Ohio State University, joins me live via Skype from Columbia, Ohio. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we know that the U.S. has been involved, is still involved somewhat in Somalia, but what is going to be different with this new, broader kind of authority to the military?
So this authority changes the roles of engagement in Somalia for the U.S. military there. Initially, there were requirements imposed by the Obama administration to the effect that civilians should not be harmed when conducting airstrikes. And also, the targets of those airstrikes, which are usually al-Shabaab members, should pose a threat to Americans. So those conditions are not required anymore. And an approval process that was supposed to be going from Africa to Washington, D.C. is not going to be followed from this point of time onwards.
Now, we know that the U.S. has said, and President Trump has said, he's committed to decimating the terrorist organizations. Is there any win-win situation in any way or fashion?
So the fight against al-Shabaab is a legitimate fight against a terrorist organization that's killing more Somalis than anyone else. However, authorizing airstrikes and combat missions that are not scrutinized for civilian casualties would really cause more problems. And al-Shabaab would gain a foothold in terms of recruiting people that are disenfranchised by the new killings. As you know, Somalis are mostly nomadic people that move from one place to another. People in the country are heavily armed all over the place. Right now, there is a drought that's almost becoming a famine that's uprooting many people who are fleeing from their homes into major cities. And they are moving in groups, in vehicles, on foot, and some of them are carrying weapons. And if the U.S. military strikes those people, then the new rules imply that that's okay, and which is not really so okay.
A case of kind of mistaken identity where people were just carrying guns because they're herdsmen could be killed. But here's a question: do you think this kind of authority has been given without consulting with Somali leadership?
I am not really sure. Maybe the news that came from the Pentagon states that, the request came from the Africa Command Center. And therefore, I would expect the U.S. command in Africa to be consulting with the Somali authorities there. I think it's time to strike al-Shabaab hard, but civilians and the interests of the local populations should be taken into consideration when fighting al-Shabaab. And the fight should not eliminate the people in the country.
And we hope so. Professor Mohammed, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's Jibril Mohammed, a professor on Somalia issues at The Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. Well, in a Friday morning tweet, U.S. President Donald Trump says he supports his former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn's offer to cooperate with congressional investigators looking into contacts between Trump campaign advisors and Russia, as long as Flynn is granted immunity from prosecution. VOA's Mike Bowman reports on the Senate Intelligence Committee's investigation into the charges.
Two witness panels confirmed what lawmakers of both parties have been saying for months.
Russia's President Vladimir Putin ordered a deliberate campaign carefully constructed to undermine our election.
Russia scholars and security experts detailed Russia's use of cyber attacks and an elaborate disinformation campaign to confuse U.S. voters and pit Americans against one another.
Russia hopes to win the second Cold War through the force of politics as opposed to the politics of force.
Neither of us wants to go to war, but they take the view that they can actually achieve a lot of what they want to do through their active measures. That is the combination of overt and covert techniques.
Hours earlier, Putin was asked whether Moscow tried to influence the U.S. election.
Read my lips.
No.
Witnesses before the Intelligence Committee described voluminous evidence to the contrary, adding that Russia was aided when the Trump campaign parroted disinformation Moscow disseminated about his opponent, Hillary Clinton. One predicted Trump also will be targeted by Russia.
It's solely based on what they want to achieve in their own landscape, whatever the Russian foreign policy objectives are. They will turn on President Trump as well. They win because they play both sides.
Amid explosive testimony, a plea for bipartisanship as the investigation unfolds.
If we politicize this process, our efforts will likely fail.
Even so, one Democrat repeated a call that President Trump release his tax returns.
I believe a key to a successful investigation is following the money. Information about Donald Trump's finances, his family, and his associates may lead to Russia.
Trump has adamantly denied any links to Russia during or after the campaign. He questioned U.S. intelligence about Russian meddling and accused media outlets of mounting a smear campaign against him. Michael Bowman, VOA News, the Capitol.
Well, China is preparing to shut down ivory factories on Friday. It is the first phase of the government's plan to end all domestic ivory trade this year. Kenyan conservation group Save the Elephant says that commitment has already had some impact. Mohammed Yusuf reports from Nairobi.
Some potentially encouraging news for conservationists. Kenya-based organization Save the Elephant says the wholesale price for raw ivory in China has dropped by nearly 2/3 in the past 3 years.
The government of China announced in December last year, 2016, that they were going to close down the ivory factories, the legal ones, and the legal shops. And so what we found was that many of the shops now are diversifying, getting out of ivory, moving into mammoth or other materials.
China is by far the world's largest consumer of ivory. Conservationists say poaching has exploded in Africa to meet demand from Asian markets. The recent Great Elephant Census showed a 30% decline in African savanna elephants between 2007 and 2014, with nearly 150,000 elephants killed. China's domestic ivory ban has been hailed as a good first step, but consumer demand must also be addressed. There are signs of progress, like this demonstration against poaching in Tanzania earlier this year, organized by the Chinese embassy.
If you go back beyond that, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, people in China were unaware that if they bought ivory, it would cause the killing of elephants. And there's been a lot of campaigning with Chinese celebrities in which Save the Elephants has taken part to change that mindset.
Save the Elephant says China's domestic ban is not enough. China must also crack down on illegal trade.
And there are over 1 million Chinese now living in Africa, and they're buying a lot of ivory retail from big markets in Luanda, in Lagos, in Cairo, and Khartoum and other places. and they're 90% of the buyers, and they're bringing that back to China. And they're also buying ivory, which is much cheaper from their neighboring countries, such as Vietnam, Laos, and Burma.
China plans to outlaw all ivory processing and sales by the end of 2017. Many African countries, including Kenya, have also rejected the idea that there can be any legal trade in ivory, banning their stockpiles as a show of force. Mohamed Yusuf for VOA News, Nairobi.
Well, in Friday's business report, U.S. stocks are set to close out the first quarter of 2017 solidly in the green. Africa 54 business correspondent Jill Malandrino has more from the NASDAQ in New York.
Today marks the end of the week, month, and the first quarter for 2017, a historical time in the U.S. and around the world, to say the least. Let's take a look at the major averages for the month of March coming into today's trade. The NASDAQ Composite is set to log the best performance of the major U.S. indexes in March, a 1.5% rise with one more session to complete. The S&P 500 is looking at a modest advance of 0.2%, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average is set to lose around 0.4% for the month. We're under a little bit of pressure to open the session on Friday, so those figures are going to probably change by the close today. For the first quarter, the stats are pretty impressive, with the NASDAQ again on track to deliver the best return of the three main indexes, with nearly a 10% gain as of Thursday's close. The S&P 500 is eyeing a 5.8% rise. The Dow is poised to add nearly 5%, which would be its sixth straight positive quarter and the longest winning streak since the fourth quarter of 2006. Now, the uptrend this quarter has largely been attributed to President Donald Trump's promises to cut taxes, deregulation, and infrastructure. While there have been numerous signed executive orders, new policy has yet to actually go through. So traders will continue to focus on what's happening out of Washington, D.C. and the general news cycle. Another reason stocks have enjoyed a nice run is economic data has been quite strong and earnings quality is slowly starting to improve. We shall see if the run-up in stocks is justified when first quarter earnings season kicks off in just a couple of weeks. From the NASDAQ market site in New York, I'm Jill Malandrino, and this is Africa 54 Business News.
Well, thank you very much. Now, many of us who grew up in a developing country face numerous public transportation challenges. There were a few commuter buses and the ride was almost never smooth, partly because of poor roads, overcrowding and poorly maintained vehicles. Africa 54's Esther Gidoyuwat shows us what it is like to use public transportation here in Washington, D.C., simply known as Metro.
I arrived in Washington, D.C. 16 years ago. But what mesmerized me most about the city was its public transportation. I was used to a difficult ride and often wondered if there was anywhere in the world where public transportation was somewhat bearable. It is a rainy morning and passengers are exiting from a bus while others check their bus routes and fares on a map. Trains on the ground and underground go about their business, ferrying passengers to their destinations. I have a prepaid Smart Trip card, a ticket that allows me to use the metro buses and trains. I meet Danielle Johnson in the bus. She tells me she enjoys riding metro.
It's usually a pretty convenient way to get from point A to point B in DC without having to worry about parking and driving.
Everything is structured here. There are road signs and designated bus routes. The bus driver wears a uniform and safety belt. Here, I take the escalator towards the train platform. The metro system has constant alerts and updates to keep customers informed. The metro road and rail services are also popular with advertisers. At this metro stop, I find customers topping up their tickets. One of them is Weston Beard. He tells me he prefers to ride the metro rather than drive.
The traffic is sort of unbearable in my mind. I'd prefer not to sit in traffic. Metro just kind of makes it easier to travel underground. But then when you factor in things, like the wear and tear on your car, and just the constant usage of it, and then you have to sort of factor in the intangible cost of my own sanity from sitting in traffic.
Here at L'Enfant Plaza, the platform is underground. A train arrives fast. Passengers exit while others wait their turn to board. An automated metro announcement reminds customers to stay safe.
When boarding, please move to the center of the car.
The train track here is above the Potomac River on the 14th Street Bridge, heading towards Reagan National Airport. Richard Wexler tells me years ago Metro used to be a jewel, but now there's lack of attention to maintenance and constant breakdowns.
The problem is the various governments that oversee Metro find it very difficult to agree and aren't willing to pay for the kind of high-quality transit system that the region needs. And while there are some systems in other parts of the world that certainly are not at this level, there are other systems that are better. I think of a system like Paris, where you are never more than 3 or 5 minutes away from a train, even on the weekends.
The Washington, D.C. public transportation system, simply known as Metro here, has had some challenges in the last few months. It is repairing its aging rail system and causing delays and frustrations among passengers. But overall, it is cost-effective and the most preferred mode of transportation. Esther Githo-Ewart, VOA News, Washington.
Great reporting there. Thanks a lot, Esther. It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, a lively taste of hip-hop music from Burkina Faso. We'll be right back.
Africans who are watching and South Africans who will hear about this.
Thank you. And the Deputy
Read together with the Constitution.
Honorable President of the NCOP.
Honorable President.
Such criminal acts are completely unacceptable.
Welcome back. It's time for a Music Makers segment, and today we're featuring music by Serge Bambara, best known by his stage name, Smokey. Here to tell us more about Smokey and his music is VOA's RM Music Radio show. Show host Roger Muntu. Roger, it's very good to see you again. It's been a while.
Good to see you too, Vance. It's been a while. That's
You've
right.
been traveling,
so
man.
I've been traveling.
Yeah, we're happy to have you
Bringing
back.
you some more material.
Exactly. And you went to West Africa, came back with this good stuff. And this music by Serge Smokey is very special because this guy is not just an entertainer. Tell me just a little bit about him.
Yeah, he's not just an entertainer. He's a rapper. He's well known all over Burkina Faso because he is a conscience rapper. He talks about things that affect his country. He's a revolutionary, if I should say it that way. He rap about things that doesn't go well with the government. He is one of the Ballet Citoyen, which is a movement that actually helped ousted President Blaise Compaoré from
wow, that's big.
Yes, very big, very big.
So the song we're going to feature here, I couldn't pronounce it so well.
Yeah, it is Tomber le Lim.
Tomber le Lim.
Yeah.
This is, I think it's talking about something to do with FGM.
Exactly, with FGM, exactly.
Society.
That's correct.
Yeah, so let's watch this and see what we can get out of it. Let's watch this.
La lame tranche, charcute le corps épanché. La petite est couchée de force, jambes écartées. À force de crier enfin, plus le temps ni la force. Que la peur et la peine et le mal, que le sang, que les pleurs et les larmes. Le temps s'écoule, la fillette a grandi. Les incommodités sont quotidiennes dans sa vie. Le choc est fatal, le souvenir brutal. Le mal est fait pour le mal, mais le mal ne satisfait aucun mal. Quand la lame tranche facile, plus que drame, laisse tomber les larmes dans l'enfer des flammes. Quoi que disent l'imam, les ancêtres ou les mâles. Pour qu'elle puisse être une femme, il faut tomber la lame.
This is really a song with a powerful message. So Tombele Lim means throw away the razor.
Throw away the razor, stop with that. And you know, Vince, this is one of the issues that you have to be really careful, that you can't just talk about it like this.
It's people's culture.
Right, exactly, because of the culture and stuff. So he feels really obligated. That's why he told me. I met with him in Ouagadougou while I was there. I had a show with him. He told me he feels really powerful talking about subject that nobody else will discuss.
But you know, it's nice that he can talk about it, because a person like this gets to reach the audiences in a very special way.
He does. He mentioned in a very special way. Matter of fact, when I was there, he was telling me that his life is always in danger. Him leaving, even to come and meet with me in the studio, he was really afraid, and he thinks that people will actually follow him, you know, to know where he was going and follow everything that he does.
And in terms of his music, how big is he, not only in his country, but outside of his country?
He is huge, not just in his country, but all over Africa, because, again, he is part of the Ballet Citoyen, which is a movement that talks about things that doesn't go well in his country with the government, with everything. But he also influenced other people in the DRC, in Senegal. He became friends with other movements like the Filimbi, the La Lucha, which is the same movement of young people in the DRC and other places in Senegal.
And is there anything you can also tell us about who else we may have to feature here that you met in West Africa during your travels?
Yeah. Another one is called Frère Malcolm. Frère Malcolm is another powerful artist that I met there. Maybe next time we'll get to talk about him. But he kind of has the same path than Smokey.
Yes, and then you brought me that beautiful interview by Alpha Blondy.
Right.
Will we get to play some of his music? Because we didn't get an opportunity to play that.
He gave me a lot of it. And you can imagine me, I was thinking about you, Vince, when I met with Alpha Blondy. The first thing that came in my head was like, Vince, because we talked about it a few times.
It's one of my favorite, all time.
So he gave me a lot of music to come play, and he talks a lot about VOA. He talked about VOA. See, I listened to VOA since I was a kid.
Good shout out. Since he was a kid, and now
and now he's meeting with this little guy, Roger Mint.
And the thing I liked about him also is, like he says, he acknowledges he has changed the message.
Exactly.
He's learned.
You heard about that in an interview. And I was really shocked, Vince. As you know, this guy was, an Alpha Blondy guy. He was direct, and now he's changing his message to love and peace. Calm down, guys. Let's sit down and...
Not militants.
No militant
not
anymore.
Rebel.
It's changing. You say, Roger, with age, things change.
Thanks a lot, Roger.
Thank you,
as always, man.
I appreciate
always
it. Thanks
good
for
to have
having
you in
me.
the studio.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
That's, I want to thank Roger Muntu for another really fantastic Music Makers segment. Now, to learn more about Roger Muntu and his VOA radio show, visit Facebook and type in the keywords Roger Muntu VOA.voa. And you can see what time his program can be heard in your area and get more information about some of his featured artists. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Most people enjoy listening to music. But is this expression actually about songs and tunes?
Music to my ears.
Jonathan, I cannot believe we have to work over the weekend.
Did you not hear the news? The meeting for the project got canceled. No work this weekend after all.
Awesome! That is music to